Hi, welcome to another weekly live that we host here at SIA Admissions. I am Susan Berishaj. I'm the founder of SIA, and every single week I join you here live on YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, and the various different platforms to share insights about the MBA application. Today, I know a lot of you are finalizing, your round one applications and need to start thinking about the next phase of the application, which is the interview. And I'm excited to launch this series about the MBA interview with today's session, where we're going to talk a little bit more broadly about what an MBA interview is like, what are some of the components that you need to think about, and then I will also invite you to some additional sessions that we're going to be holding. So if you go to siaadmissions.com's website /events, you'll be able to see all the events that we have for the month of August. We've also added one special event where we're going to be interviewing a Oxford Said recent grad, James Efera. He will be with me on Monday, the 12th of August, where we're going to talk about his MBA journey in the UK and what he's doing now and how he leveraged the Oxford Said MBA to make a career transition. So I'm just going to pop that on the screen as to where do you register for this. Again, you can go to the website, join us on that day. And then next week, Thursday, our regular program, we're going to talk a bit more about common interview questions. What are they? How you should be preparing? And we'll have a few additional sessions for the interview preparation that I invite you to register for. Ask your questions in the registration form. This way we get to incorporate those responses to those questions in the presentation itself. So whether you join us live or join us or rewatch it after it's been played live, you can obviously see your questions responded to. But if you join us live, you do get to ask follow-up questions, and I'm looking forward to engaging with you. So whichever platform you're joining us from, please do write your questions, and I will be monitoring the screen, which is on this side for me, and to look at the questions that you guys are interested to understand better. So with that, why don't we get started? Let me just remove this from the screen. And I'm monitoring this today by myself, so I may be kind of going between two different pages, so I apologize for that. So let's dive right in with what we're going to talk about today, which is the MBA interview. And before we dive into what the interview is like, I think it's important to understand, why is it important? Why are they asking you to jump through these hoops to get into business school? And there are quite a few different reasons why business school asks this and what they're looking for when they conduct interviews. Now here I'm talking about the official interview, as in you've been invited officially to interview. This is not about the video interviews or video essays or anything like that. So just keep those are two different distinct modalities, and some schools have both. So some schools have a video interview as well as a in-person virtual interview as well. What they're looking for in these conversations, which are really the official interview after you submit, they are looking to understand that you know why you've chosen that program. They understand that most people are going to apply to 5 to 6 schools in their application journey, but they also want to understand how likely are you to say yes to the school that has invited you to interview. So they're gauging for your interest in the school, understanding what it offers for you, but also recognizing what that culture fit. This is more about interpersonal dynamics than it is about any specific skills that you bring to the table. Every school has its own culture. It must be thought of as a breathing, living thing. And they're looking to maintain that culture because that culture works for that school, unless it's no longer working, and that's another conversation for another day. So the point here is that you do want to demonstrate that you can embody, or you embody the culture of that school. You've been attracted to it because it offers you a lot of data points, i.e., sorry, I'm speaking in writing terms. For example, academic training in a particular area, hands-on learning experiences. Those are more like the technical training, but part of your training, part of your development and professional growth is being in the right environment with the right people. And the right people, it's not just about how accomplished they are, it's also about the culture fit. And these are some of the things that they're looking for in terms of the interview. They also recognize that there are coaches out there that support applicants. They recognize that people have time to think through what they write in their application, do research, and they mean what they receive in terms of the application may not be an exact representation of the applicant's communication skills. So the interview is a place to see how you engage, how you communicate with others. And because it's unscripted in terms of, you can be asked any kind of question that the interviewer feels like asking, they are able to see how you think on your feet as well. This is important in terms of where you are on the journey. And the reason why we started this before this discussion, before you actually submit your applications, is because you need to prepare well in advance to sound very natural. And most of the times, people, when you go through this process, obviously you have a lot of elements that you are thinking about, preparing about in terms of what you're sharing with the school and conversations that you have. And you are already getting comfortable having ad-lib conversations about you, but you're not there yet. Most people are not there yet in terms of being ready for the MBA interview. Even if you've had many job interviews that you've done before, this is a different style. And you must start preparing before the interview comes out, because once the interview comes out, you do not have a lot of time. Typically, you have about 2 weeks. 3 weeks is stretching it from the time that you are invited to interview to the date of the interview itself. So the more you can do preemptively to prepare on the basics, the better you're going to be in terms of being able to have that conversation naturally, comfortably, having strong communication skills, but then also allow yourself the time when you have those school-specific interview invites, then you can focus your attention on the school-specific preparation itself. So what are some interview styles? We have the on-campus interview, or a version of like showing up in front of a space. So Harvard Business School has one of those methodologies in terms of their MBA interview. Then we have the online, which is most interviews that are conducted through Zoom or some sort of platform like Zoom, where you are having a conversation with another party. The interviews can be conducted by admission representatives. Some schools is exclusive, other schools it's a combination. So some schools have exclusively admission representatives like MIT. Other schools have admission representative, alumni, and current student that are sort of like in the mix of doing the interviews for all applicants. Who you are paired with is dependent on your luck and what you've said in your application in terms of your goals. Interviews, the style of interview can be either behavior interview, which is the most common, and behavior interviews are the ones that ask you questions like, tell me about a time you dealt with conflict, sort of questions, right? It's more conversational, it's getting to know you. There are going to be a lot of follow-up questions that follow a behavior interview style. Then we have the team-based interview. This is exclusive to Wharton. This is where you are given a case and you are in a room with 4 to 5 other prospective candidates like yourself. You're solving the case, and you are then having a one-on-one afterwards with a second-year student, typically. That is exclusive to Wharton. It's a very complicated interview preparation process, which we will be making some announcements on that relatively soon. So stay tuned for what's to come on the Wharton TBD, team-based discussion, in short, TBD. And then there's the video interviews that some schools host, which is exclusively a video interview. You don't get to meet with anyone. The interview is going to be exclusively on a platform where the questions are going to show up and everyone is equally treated the same. And a school like that only does that and not a one-on-one, it's McCombs in the top 20 list. Okay, so how do you prepare? Most of you will think that, okay, I've put in my applications, I've done a lot of research already, I don't need to do anything. I know that, I know my story because I've written my applications, so I can just, practice some very basic pieces and I'll be fine. That's actually not the right way to approach the MBA interview preparation for a few reasons. One, the day that you show up for the interview, nerves skyrocket. That is, most people experience that. What you can do to help yourself be ready, it's to conduct a lot of research and be really specific in terms of why have you chosen that particular school. In your essays, you're going to include a few things, but here's an opportunity to bring color to life, or to bring, the words to life that you've written in your application and go even beyond that. So you need to re-research the schools that you are targeting, the schools that you're applying to, in terms of the preparation and knowing your whys. You should be continuing conversations with alumni and students to further understand the school offerings. And if you are local, I don't mean this is not for international applicants. So if you're locally close to the school you're applying to, I would also suggest, once classes start in September, that you do plan a class visit to actually see what it feels like to be a student in that program. That will really help you internalize what the experience is like, so that when you show up in front of the interviewer, you know exactly why are you there, and why you have chosen the particular school that you have been invited to interview for. So that's one of a very important component. The other component is that while you know your story, you need, every school has its own unique questions that they ask, and therefore unique presentation of your story. I do suggest that before you start the interview for the school-specific preparation, you reread your application, as well as the day before and the day of the interview, reread your application to that given school. Now, you may say, Susan, I know my story again. Why am I doing this? Why am I putting a lot of effort in this process? You will be, if you reread your application, you will be in the mindset of the interview, and the mindset of what you wrote in your application, irrespective of the interview being blind or not. And what I mean by blind interview, it's when the interviewer only has your resume and nothing else, meaning they haven't read the rest of your application. Even in those cases, it's important that you show up fully prepared in the same mindset, framework, perspective in terms of telling your story as you have done in your application. Caveat here, that's really important. Under no circumstances do I advise that you change your story in the interview phase. When you're invited to interview, it means that what you wrote in your application was exciting enough for the admission team to invite you to get to know your story a little bit more, to get to know you a little bit more. If you change midway, you are almost guaranteeing a rejection. This is not the time and place to make changes. The time and place to make changes is before you submit your application. And then once you are there, then stick to the story, stick to what you wrote, stick to your goals of what you said in your application, and do not deviate. From there, you also want to talk about, or you want to practice common interview questions. I will have a slide with a few of those questions, but we'll dive deeper in next week's session on how to prepare for those questions. So I advise you to really register for that and make sure that you are notified on those particular questions. If you have any questions for me as I'm going through this process, please write them in the comments of whichever platform you're joining us from. So this way I can answer the question along the way. It's always a little bit more engaging when we do it that way. Okay, so let's continue while you're thinking about your questions. So the next thing is you should have a lot of mock sessions to practice responses. And be able to elevate your responses as you go through this process. It's not good enough to just practice by yourself. You do need to, first and foremost, practice out loud. First and foremost, you need to prepare responses for the questions, practice out loud, and then gauge feedback from other people that you trust, and work with someone who does this for a living in terms of helping you get there. When you get to the interview phase, you are 50% of your way to admission. Whether you work with a coach or not previously, I do suggest that you work with someone to help you in this process. It's a very challenging process that you shouldn't be taking it lightly, and make sure that you ace that interview for a much higher chances of converting to an offer of admission. And the feedback that you're getting from whether it's a friend or a coach is really helping you elevate your responses, making sure that the story that you're telling is not only linear, but it's adding color. It is showing how you think, showing how you are presenting yourself in a way that makes sense. The other element that oftentimes I see applicants make mistakes on is they prepare a set of questions and they're only able to answer or give responses to those set of questions. When applicants work with me through the process of interview, yes, we have a set of questions that they are preparing for. But then we actually change the way we ask the question. And that's purposefully done that way because the interviewer may ask the question differently. And what we don't want is for you to be stumped if the question is not exactly the same, ask the same way in terms of how you prepare. So just do make sure that you prepare responses, practice those responses, but then also practice being able to answer the question with the same responses if the question is slightly different than what you've been practicing. You should also make sure that you have questions prepared for the interviewer. It's not a one-sided conversation. It is truly a two-sided conversation in terms of your preparation and how you show up. You do want to be engaged. If they ask you something, show engagement, but you want to go in rather with some questions in hand for the interviewer. And typically before the interview, you will know who the person is going to be that's interviewing you. Whether it's a student, whether it's an alumnus, whether it's an admission representative, you'll get a sense, and that way you can prepare questions appropriate for the interviewer. And what I mean by that is typically a admission representative interviewer questions, so questions you're going to ask the interviewer, shouldn't be the same as the questions that you ask a student who has firsthand experience in the program as it stands currently. So those are nuances that you'll want to make sure that you are practicing and having your own checklist to prepare. And then, of course, you want to groom and dress appropriately. If you are in an in-person interview, do make sure that you're also not putting a lot of perfumes or things that sometimes can be distracting for the interviewer. I'm sensitive to that because I get migraines from certain scents. So, just make sure that you're keeping that in mind as you go through in-person interviews. Okay, so effective interview techniques, active listening is absolutely key. I oftentimes see applicants in the preparation process go through a development phase, which is, I've prepared answers for these questions and I know these answers. But when we change the question slightly, they're not able to integrate that question, or they're only listening halfway to the question and not fully before they have already decided what they're going to be answering. It's really important to be an active listener in the conversation so that you're actually answering fully the question. If you are not actively listening, what you risk is not leaving a great impression on the interviewer, which impacts the report that they're writing afterwards. The interview is not only about what you say. Obviously, it's effective communication as well, but also nonverbal communication. This is about how you show up. How are you engaging with the interviewer? Where are you looking? If you're looking to the sideways, looking down, not looking at the camera, and not looking at the person in front of you if you're doing an in-person discussion. Those are all important components you have to keep in mind as you go through the preparation process. When it comes to behavior type questions, you should be using either the CAR or the STAR method in responses. So that's context, action, result, or situation, task, action, result format. That's how you're going to prepare your responses internally, and you're going to practice in being able to deliver responses in that way. It's typically the most effective way to make sure that you answer fully, to make sure that you give enough details for the interviewer to really understand what your contributions have been, without and actually anchoring you in a way that you're not going in all sorts of directions to answer a given question. And like I said earlier, you want to tailor your responses to the question that is being asked and not to what you've prepared. It's really, really important. You need to internalize your responses so much so that you are able to sort of like restructure the response and still be able to use the material that you've used, as well as be able to answer the question effectively. And be engaging, finally. It's more than just waiting for the questions and responding to those questions and nodding when the interviewer says something. It's really about you engaging with them. It's about building rapport. This means that when the interviewer interjects or adds something to the conversation, you engage with it. That's how the relationship is built. That's how you build friendships, and it's going to be important for you to effectively do this. Now, in the final slide, and then we'll move on to questions. So write your questions in the comments so that I can respond to those. So the common interview questions are, tell me about yourself or walk me through your resume. Next week, I'm going to be talking about these particular questions, how you answer these, but you should start writing them down, making a list on how you would be answering these particular questions. So tell me about yourself. It's more of an opening invitation. Walk me through your resume. It's also an opening invitation to a discussion. That said, clients have had experiences where this was not the opening question, it was a different question, and this came later down the line of the conversation. So you do need to make sure that in the process of your preparation, you're not fixated on following an order of questions, because your interviewer may choose to abandon the order that you have set out and follow their own. So keep that in mind. You need to be able to respond to, why do you want an MBA? Why is now the right time? That is a very typical question that you're being asked, and you must have an answer. You shouldn't be solely relying on what you have on your application. Obviously, that's the basis point. Do not change from there, but be able to communicate more effectively with more color as to, why do you want an MBA? Why do you want a specific school? The research I mentioned in the earlier slide is going to be very important here. There are some schools where the interviewer has your entire application, therefore they know what you wrote in there, but they can still ask you why this specific school, and you need to be able to add more than what you wrote in your application and be excited and engaging and showcase that you really want to attend this particular program. What are your short and long-term goals? Instrumental. You must be able to speak to this. And I will say that you should not change your goals mid-process. I said it earlier. I'm going to just repeat it one more time. Do not change your goals mid-process. What got you the interview is what excites the school. If you change your goals because now you decide you want to be more authentic, or whatever your reason is to change your goals, or because you've had conversations with other people about your goals, it's not the right time to do it. You can change your goals after you're admitted, not until that point. Stick to what you wrote in the application that got you the interview. And finally, and these are the most common, by the way, this is not an exclusive list. Typically, when I coach applicants through this process, we go through about 70 questions that we are coaching them through to make sure that they're really having a full understanding of what their experiences have been, and be able to answer any kind of question that comes their way. But the final question that I'm going to just discuss here, it's describe a challenging situation you faced and how you handled it. It's important that the behavior type questions are not going to present a rosy scenario. The reason is that it doesn't show your leadership. It doesn't show how you handle challenges. And for your professional journey is going to be one in which you're going to have many challenges you have to deal with. And that's why the behavior type questions, tell me about a time, kind of questions, are very much focused around challenges and not so much focused around, tell me about a beautiful day at your job, right? Those are not the kind of questions you're going to get in an interview. So be mindful that you're going to be presenting your own story, right? What your engagement has been. You can incorporate other people, but you are the center stage in the interview. Your experiences, your contributions, your impact is at the center stage. So say we where appropriate, say I where appropriate in your responses to these questions. So this is the end of the slide. If you are interested in discussing how we can help you in the interview preparation process, I invite you to request a consultation to discuss this process together. We can always support you in terms of preparing for interviews more generally, and then we can also discuss preparing for school-specific interviews. So definitely invite you to have at least, you should, at this point, you should be looking, if you're going to hire a coach, you should be looking for identifying a coach, even if you don't start the process at this moment. And that gives you some time to identify what's out there, what's available, and find the right person for you in terms of what you're looking for. Excellent. So let's dive to questions. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and move on to questions. All right. I don't see any questions in the chat. So let's dive into questions that have come in through the registration. Okay, so what are the most important factors to research about specific schools before the interview? Excellent. This is an excellent question, and I'm glad that I didn't go so deep into the discussion today that I didn't have a chance to answer this. This is a very important process in terms of the research and knowing exactly what to research. You're going to be needing to research the academic opportunities that the school offers. So if there are majors, if there are professors that are there, particularly in fields that are somewhat niche, that those names of the professors are important in your field, that's going to be important. You should be researching hands-on learning opportunities. You're going to business school because this is not traditional academia. This is business school in terms of practical experiences, in addition to theoretical knowledge, but practical experience is important. And you need to identify what those are for you and what are you going to leverage in the MBA program. And then from there, you're also going to look at and understand exactly what the opportunities lie in terms of clubs, in terms of community, in terms of beyond the school itself, in terms of alumni. So all the verticals, when it comes to the MBA application, you must research in understanding what those opportunities are in terms of you leveraging the school's offerings. Another thing that you may want to do is also consider essentially making sure that you understand what opportunities you have to contribute, because that is a question that most of the time is asked. What do you look forward to contributing? What's the legacy? It's a legacy question is a tuck standard. What is what legacy do you want to leave behind at the school? And this is about your contributions to the school. So they're saying, I acknowledge that we're going to give you a lot in terms of the experience here. What are you going to give us? What are you going to provide for this community? And you must know what you can provide. So you need to research what the opportunities are and then reflect on how you can contribute to those opportunities. Excellent. So I think we're out of time at this moment. So I thank you for joining this session, whether you've watched it live, whether you are watching it as a replay. I appreciate you, you being here. Share this video, give it a thumbs up if you liked it, if you found the content useful for you, and join us next week. In both sessions. First is James Efera, if you're considering Oxford Said. So if you're going to the UK, join us then to talk about his MBA journey and how he got to a product manager now, which is going to be a very exciting discussion. And then after that, on our Thursday, regular programming on Thursday, we're going to be discussing interview questions and how to approach those interview responses. So you can start that preparation as you finalize and submit your round one applications. So thank you again for being here, and I look forward to next week's discussions. Bring your questions along, and good luck with the submissions as we are approaching round one. Bye-bye.